This is Crave News Money with Kent Emmons.
Why are so many Americans literally financially illiterate? And how do people make a living and build a big business on their own in these post-COVID times? In his new book, Unemployable, oil and gas entrepreneur and publishing executive David Thomas Roberts shares some insights from an angle that I guarantee you haven't heard before. David Thomas Roberts, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. Doing great.
Good. You know, it's great to have you here. You know, you're a best-selling author, and you wrote a book recently that's become a favorite of a lot of people. It's called Unemployable, How to Be Successfully Unemployed Your Entire Life. And wow, is that appropriate right now?
Well, it is. And in fact, ABC News had an article out about 6 months ago before this pandemic started, or what's called a pandemic. And 46% of Americans couldn't lay their hands on $400 cash in an emergency. So I'm not sure what that tells us about us, but people need to be in business for themselves and take control of their own lives.
They absolutely do. And of course, you know, even like you said before the pandemic, people were in pretty bad shape, and the country was actually in pretty bad shape itself. It seemed to be coming around under current leadership. But what do you make of what's going to happen now with all these kids? I say kids, you know, people under 30, they're unemployed or they're just graduating college and trying to get out, find a job or need to find a job. What's going to happen?
Well, I give that generation a lot of credit. In fact, I have a couple of kids in that generation myself, and you know, they kind of started what I call the gig economy, which, you know, most of them don't want to do the 8 to 5. You know, they may be given guitar lessons one day, driving an Uber another day, just because they want the freedom to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And so I think that generation gets it. I think that they don't want to do what their parents did. They don't, you know, and the days of going to work for a company for 30 years and retiring, those days have been long gone. You know, about the only secure job now is in government because you can't ever get fired.
Very true, especially if you get that good union gig.
Yeah, the SEIU or one of those type of gigs, absolutely.
So Dave, you're an entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur, same thing. You know, the regulatory environment is so difficult now to start a business. What do you tell kids right now that are out there looking to start something or needing to start something? And as we emerge from this crisis, how does that happen?
Well, the regulatory, thankfully, Trump has ended a lot of that, but we still have a lot of it in the states, and there is a big difference in states. I mean, take your state, your home state. Compared to Texas or California, we don't have near the restrictions and the regulations that other states have. So sometimes it just depends what type of business that you're starting, what those regulations are. But I mean, they're out there, and you know, unfortunately, it's you know, the regulations in California, Illinois, New York, and other states are really anti-entrepreneur.
You know, what are some of the regulations that you've seen Trump actually roll back over the years, and Trump and his crew over the last 3 years that have helped businesses flourish up until this crisis? Then I want to talk about the crisis.
Well, you know, the biggest impact Trump has had in my region, in Texas, is the oil, and relaxing regulations on oil industry, enabling them to drill, enabled to go after the shale, the Keystone Pipeline. Those are all kind of things that have benefited the economy in Texas and really ultimately the United States. But the EPA and those type of things have really been relaxed. I think there's a lot more work to do in other areas with the IRS and others, but it's a start.
David, I know you're referred to as a modern day Renaissance man, but you're also a futurist. I mean, you run technology companies, you run companies that deal with things that are looking way out. What do you see as some of the industries that some of these younger folks can get into that one would catch now and could be sustainable?
Well, you know, I will tell you, people that understand networks and technology, computer programming, you're always going to have a job because now that this China virus has hit, I think, you know, I'll just give one of my examples, my telecommunications company. We'd only been at remote workers during hurricanes. This was a big test for us to see if we could pull this off long term. And, you know, we haven't missed a beat. Our production levels are actually higher. And so I think that a lot of businesses like ours are going to revisit, you know, this whole remote worker issue, because I think there's a future in that. So people that know how to get people up and running in a home business or a home work environment, that's been lacking. There's a lot of demand on that right now because people have moved their people out of their office spaces into their homes and dealing with the networks and computers and all the things associated with that is going to be a big opportunity coming forward, because I don't think this is going to end just when the pandemic ends.
Got it. With your kids, what are the age groups?
My youngest is 28, my oldest is 40.
Got it.
And I have 4 of them.
And do they have any desire to really go out and work in an office building or do anything like that, or are they more entrepreneurial and out and about?
Well, they're all entrepreneurial, but 2 of them, my 2 boys actually work with us in the telecommunications company, and they like doing it because they figure that, when dad's gone, somebody's got to run it, right? So they're actively involved in that, in actually in the decision-making processes, and they still do some things on their own too, but the family's pretty entrepreneurial, that's for sure.
That's great. And on the publishing side of your business, what do you publish? I know I've seen a lot of great titles come out of there.
Most of our titles are fiction or nonfiction that have a bent on either libertarianism or conservative based. A lot of political thrillers, a lot of, in fact, our next big blockbuster we got coming out, it's coming out in June. It's by Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And so we've got we've even had some dystopian titles go out. But business titles, we're always looking for great business titles. But the publishing company got started because most of the publishing industry is extremely liberal. And a lot of times they wouldn't publish our books. So we just found a better mousetrap and started our own. I usually figure things out. If I can re-engineer it myself and do it better, then we'll do it. And that's what we did in the publishing industry.
I love it. That's fantastic. Let's go back real quick and talk about this current crisis. How early on did you see this thing coming? At what point did you have the holy shit moment, like this could be something really bad? And when it played out, how do you see it play out from your eyes?
Well, I was keeping track of it probably normally more than I would normally, this kind of news, because my wife and I and some friends, we traveled to London in early February. And so, I was looking at that to see if that virus had spread to the UK. At that point, there had only been 2 cases in the UK. And we spent a week there. And by the time we got back, it wasn't just a couple weeks later that Trump shut down travel from there. And then it grew in the UK. So I was probably more tuned into it, maybe because I knew I was traveling internationally. And just wanted to see what the impact was.
As far as this thing being a little bit overblown, I know most people now looking back, obviously it was something that has seriously gotten out of hand. What's your take on that? Well,
this has been the only pandemic in our history where we've quarantined the healthy instead of the sick. So, back in the Spanish flu in 1918, you quarantined people that had symptoms that were sick. So I want people to be safe, but shutting down the entire economy instead of doing incrementally or where you have hot spots, we're going to be paying for this. My grandchildren are going to still be paying for these efforts that we have now.
How so?
Well, the debt, for your audience, just this debt is not sustainable. Eventually somebody's got to pay the piper. And if it doesn't crash the dollar, our taxes are, if this administration changes, there's no doubt our taxes are going to go way up. But you just can't sustain this. And you just can't keep printing money before you either have deflation or inflation that's out of control. And then your money becomes worthless.
Let me ask you this, Dave. Going into this thing, there was approximately $25 trillion in current debt and about $130 trillion in unfunded liabilities in the way of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, things like that. And now they're talking upwards, actually, of $20 additional trillion to get this thing done. It was interesting, we first had heard $4 to $6 trillion, then it went up to $12 trillion, and then by the time they got right now, they're still talking about up to 12 to 14 trillion in actual dollars being printed to try to get this thing calmed down, plus some other easing through the Fed. What does that do to us? What do you think that does to us?
Well, it just creates a mountain that we can never get over. There's going to have to be a reset of some kind. Who knows what that's going to be? But whether we cancel the debt of China over this thing that caused a lot of this lately, or people. This goes back to the financial literacy in America, not understanding this. I mean, if the average American can't get their hands on $400 in an emergency, then how are we going to understand how this debt's going to affect us long term?
Let's talk about financial literacy in America. You've written on this subject. You've spoken on this subject. Where did it start, and at what point did folks in America become literally financially illiterate?
Well, I mean, we've had a government-funded liberal education going on for 75 years. So it's been incremental, but I would ask your audience, when's the last time they took a class that taught them how to balance a checkbook, how to get a mortgage, some of the essential life skills financially that you need? Nobody teaches them anymore. I think there's only 17 states right now in the United States that require high school to take any kind of personal financial course as a core curriculum subject, not as an elective, but as a core curriculum subject. So this is why you see people get into student debt for thousands and thousands of dollars that they have no hope of repaying with the job that they're going to get coming out of college, paying for those. And it's just one thing on top of another. And we've just really let financial literacy slide. And it started in my generation. I'll be the first to say that our generation is responsible for it, because you were get taught to go out and get a job. Okay, grow up, get a good education, go get a job. Whatever happened to grow up, get a good education, and start your own business?
Let me ask you something, Dave. I think you would agree with this. I don't care if you're liberal, conservative, in the middle, where you are. A lot of people want to go out, start their own business. They want to make money. They want to become wealthy. They want to build their wealth. They want to win. Again, without a lot of training in the schools, in the public schools right now to do this, what tools do you as an entrepreneur use to teach those folks that you mentor? Well,
I read a lot. I've always read a lot my entire life. I always try to find time to read. I like to study people that are already successful. If I get around somebody that has maybe the lifestyle or the life that I want to have, I call it unpacking them. I will ask them questions until they got to get rid of me. I didn't understand. I got an opportunity to spend. I spent an evening one night with the 9th richest man in the world, and everybody went to bed after dinner at 7 o'clock. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's still me and him and one other guy, and I'm asking him a million questions, and he loved it. He says, my kids don't even ask me the questions you're asking me. And so you just try to find a mentor. I think that's really important. Read a lot, and then at the end of the day, find something that you love to do. If you can find something that you love to do and can make money at it, great. Not everything you love to do you can make money at, but if you find that combination, then it's off to the races.
Absolutely agree. I want to get back real quickly to your book, Unemployable: How to Be Successfully Unemployed Your Entire Life. What advice do you have for kids right now that are just getting out of college, that don't stand much of a chance at all of becoming employed anyway, and those who have recently become unemployed and it looks like those jobs aren't coming back anytime soon?
Well, look around you. Every time I used to walk into an establishment, I'm trying to figure out how the establishment makes money. Even a dry cleaner is like, okay, how many garments would they have to take in to pay all these people, pay for that equipment? You just got to ask questions and start thinking, and look at things and try to deconstruct them a little bit and try to figure out, is there a better way to do this? Because listen, you don't have to be the next inventor of the next big thing, not the next iPhone, the next Apple computer. With me originally, I learned how to do something better that was already established. I just thought there's a better way to do something and improve on something, even if it's just customer service, and just find something that you think you can do better than what it's being provided now, or solve a problem.
Dave, what was your first biz?
My first business was washing cars, pulling weeds, and mowing the lawns of my neighbors. And I went to them because I didn't get an allowance. There was no such thing in my house as an allowance. So if I wanted money to buy extra things, I had to go earn it. I would sack groceries. I pulled trap and skeet at a gun range. I did all kinds of things, but I would, and I developed my own customers. I had regular customers for mowing their lawns and washing their cars. And, I always wanted to have money. I couldn't stand. To this day, I'm terrified of being broke.
Absolutely the same way. And by the way, grew up doing the same thing. Washing cars, mowing those yards, having a great time. Even carried a lot of golf clubs back in the day.
Yep, absolutely. And those are great because the tips on the golf course are usually pretty good.
Hey, Dave, I want people to be able to get a hold of you, be able to buy your books, be able to see you, watch your videos, and come hear you speak when this crisis is over. How do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Texas Author. I'm very active on Twitter. I had about 100,000 followers until Twitter did their purge. Now I think I got about 20,000 followers, but I'm very active on Twitter. David Thomas Roberts on Facebook, and our publishing company is called Defiance Press and Publishing, defiancepress.com. And look for news coming out because we're launching a new venture called Wealthio, which stands for Wealth equals Education plus Opportunity. So we're going to put a lot of these people that have lost jobs back in their own business for themselves. So that's going to be coming out in August.
I love it. That's a great. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate
it, brother.
Thank you.